Okay, so for this variation of the 90-90 pails and rails, we're going to set ourselves up, of course. The home base is that 90-90 position, meaning front knees bent at 90 degrees, back knees bent at 90 degrees, and then by virtue, that hip angle between the two thighs, also 90 degrees. So you want to make sure first and foremost that that's your home base. Now, if you can't get into this position and feel grounded, what you're going to do is you're going to take a cushion, an ab mat like so, anything, a yoga block that you can prop up that front hip, because what we want to be able to do here is square ourselves in line with this front thigh. So adjust, accommodate as needed to make that happen. Once we're in this 90-90 position and we've squared ourselves to the front, I want you to start by just easing into the loading pattern here. So we want to make sure that the spine's staying neutral and we're reaching through the crown of the head. That's very different than trying to get down, but doing so because of the rounding of the low back. So I'm reaching, I'm loading that front outside of the hip, and then easing back out. And this is just getting us familiar with the position. When we're in that kind of bottom end range here, imagine your back hip is pushing forward and you're pulling your front thigh bone back into the socket so that they're working against each other to keep that square. Now the pails and rails of this, the progressive angular isometric loading or the regressive angular isometric loading, basically what we want to think about is a push and a pull. So in that position, back thigh forward, front thigh back, rotating in, reaching in, you're going to find your end range. I'm using my hands here, but I'm not holding myself up, nor am I holding myself up with my hands, nor am I trying to hold myself up with my strength. So I've set myself up, I'm using just that little bit of support, and now within this position, I'm going to use whatever musculature I can to ground down into the floor. And we're going to hold that, pressing in, feeling the outside of the hip, feeling the leg, pushing the shin down, bracing the core. We're going to hold this for a 10, 9, 8, continued active pressure here. It feels like effort. 3, 2, 1. Now I'm going to imagine lifting everything up. I'm pulling in, so the opposite muscle groups. I'm trying to lift the shin up, lift the inner thigh up. Obviously that's not actually going to happen, but we're trying to get those antagonistic muscles to do the opposite tension here, pulling inwards. And we're holding this now for 10, 9, 8, continuing to breathe, but with your brace. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we're going to let go of all tension and see, while maintaining that neutral spine, if we can sink a little bit deeper into the position. Rest here, breathing full breath cycle, so full expansive inhale, fully decompress on the exhale. And once you feel settled, about 20 seconds, you're going to do that all again. You're going to push down for 10, you're going to pull for 10, and then we're going to settle in for 10. And by doing the opposite muscle contractions here, we're creating more space, but strength of that space to allow us to get more range. When you have finished that, you do that 2, 3 times, 4 times, depending on what I've programmed for you. Now we're going to do a bear transition to get to the other side. So I'm firing the muscles on the outside of this hip, I'm pulling that thigh open, and we're going to keep that as far down as I can while pulling this guy open. When I absolutely can't get any further, now I'm going to let it lift, but I'm still pulling both open in opposition to each other, trying to maintain my long spine, own this middle position, feel the outside of the hips pulling through, and now with tension, we'll transition over to the other side. Once we get here, you may need to now readjust because you might have to prop this hip up now. That's totally fine. You'll find your new position, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, and you'll do a few loading patterns here as well. Reach through the crown of the head and over top. Breathe, feel it out, and then when you're ready, starting the same pails and rails on this side. Pressing, using all of the tension to push down, pulling, and then passively sinking into that new potential range. As we're going through this, what I want you to make sure you're continuing to maintain is also that brace. When we're sinking into these positions, especially when we're trying to create tension, lots of this stuff starts to take over. You start to pull with funny areas through our obliques, through our QLs, little bits of low back. We want to make sure that your trunk here stays its own solid unit, and there's tension there, but the tension is to stay put as a unit versus to help funny compensations pulling you into the movement. And that is how we're going to do your 90-90 pails and rails.